Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Highlighting Greatness with Fisayo. Um, Extremely excited about this podcast because I have a great friend that we actually just reconnected. We met about 15 years ago on the campus of the great University of Texas. Welcome.
Thank you.
uh, Folabi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks, Society. Here.
Yeah, so like I said, me and Falabi hooked up uh, just recently after about 15 years, maybe 10 years uh, that we both graduated and left. I don't know when you graduated. I think you graduated maybe a year
Oh,
before me.
eight. Yeah.
Yeah, I graduated in '09. But so, man, you were at UT. So I'll rewind. We met at UT, and this dude was like a child prodigy, like he was so smart, but one of the very impressive things about him was that he was young. He was 15 when he started at UT, and you know everyone was just like, whoa. But he was a very mature, even at that age. He was very mature, very intelligent. um I think you were president of one of the organizations that we were both in. I don't even know what you majored in, man. What was your major?
Chemical engineering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And we were both in the African Student Association, both Nigerian,
Yep.
but you were coming straight from Nigeria here. Why don't we talk about that a little bit, and just like, because to me, that is amazing. That is, you don't really hear every day that, there's a 15-year-old, you know, in in college. So,
Yeah. It was, for me, it didn't seem unusual, right? Because I had just finished secondary school or high school in Nigeria. And for me, that what felt like the next step. My peers were going to college like Morehouse or Howard or Duke. And so for me, like, that was my next step. And it's funny how I actually was able to skip two grades. The first one, when I was younger, we lived in the UK, and so we moved back from England back to Nigeria. And because the curriculum is different, they didn't know what grade to put me in. And one of my friends was in primary five, so I was like, "Put me in primary five, not primary four." And that's how I just jumped over to
jumped
primary five.
ahead.
And then the school I went to, I did well on common entrance exams, so I skipped primary six, and that's how. So I show up at my secondary school, Alashiri, and turns out I'm like the second youngest boy in my year. I don't think they knew that. I didn't publicize that fact,
Right.
but that's probably what set me on this path to like starting at UT at 15, and um, you know, it was interesting because like I felt like I was academically ready. And because I had gone to boarding school in Nigeria, I felt like I was used to handling myself and being away from my family. But then I had some social constraints, right? So you know, if you want to go out at night, go out to the bars, you have to be 21 years old. And I finished college when I was 20. So like, there's some social constraints that come with it, but then there are ways around it by having parties. And I had a great social life,
Yeah.
life. But yeah, it was great.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about some of that, man. We were at UT. For me, UT was amazing. As far as I would not. That was probably one of the best decisions that I made as far as undergrad to go to. And
Absolutely.
I mean, I struggled. I wasn't as smart as you. I was not. I was not making great grades, but I had fun. We
Yeah,
had a lot of fun. I know we were in ASA together, the African Student Association, and we were out there partying sometimes.
absolutely. Yes.
Um, you and I, just Sixth Street,
Mhm.
all of that. It was a great time. But what was so amazing about what I one of the things that I took from ASA was just not, the love and the appreciation of the continent of Africa, and a lot of bright minds and students and stories coming from Africa, but also just some of the amazing things that a lot of us were doing with that. We had, people from literally all over the continent. And it wasn't just restricted to us either. It was for people who also wanted to learn more about the culture, more about the continent. We had one of our mutual friends who who was ended up being one of the maybe a vice president or something at some point.
Treasurer, I believe. Look it
Treasurer.
up.
Yeah, yeah. And so he's a white guy,
Yeah.
and we all assumed, or maybe I assumed, I know a few other people have just assumed, oh, he's South African, right? He's a white South African. And so we were cool with him, and even regardless of that, we still would have been cool with him. But years later, the funny story is I ran into him actually in South Texas, where I was working. I'm a pharmacist, and this guy is like the assistant district attorney, right, in this county, again doing
Yeah.
great things. And so I was like, "Yo, man, like, so you're South African, right?" And he was like, "No, I'm from. Did he say? Is it Arkansas?" Or something? He was like,
Arkansas, Alabama, one of them.
Alabama, one of them. Like, I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
what? And it blew
Yep.
me. I'm like, but your last name, like, is like, isn't that German? Isn't that like a South
It's a
African
German last
German name?
name. Yeah, it sounds almost like an
It,
Afrikaans name. Yeah,
yeah, it
but
sounded a little bit, And he was like, no, I'm from
it's
Alabama, and I was just mind blown, But still, regardless of that, obviously we did accept him. And Folabi, I think you knew that he wasn't
yeah.
South African, but it didn't make a difference, And there were
No
so
way.
many amazing people that were part of us. Now I'll be honest, I didn't pay dues. All right, I was a member, but
But
I was
all
in.
right.
Hey, I might drop in on a meeting here and there, but I didn't pay no dues. But
It
no,
was a great experience. For me, like as an officer, and like because I was the treasurer first of all before I became president, and
okay,
just being able to take on leadership and organize things, like it's like a way for us to practice running business in a way. Like
right,
Kepa, she took over First Africa. We took her to the main mall for the very first time. We went from having this event that my first year was like 150 people came to First Africa, and like when Kepa ran it, it was like 1,000 people. I mean, at the main mall and like celebrating African culture, like, or
right,
just like, for me, it was amazing. I mean, I know when I think back, I think that year was present, not to brag, but I remember like our team was very successful. Like, I think we doubled the number of, double the paid memberships. So that's not including you. But then we tripled the amount of money raised for charity. And like, I think I think that's really important.
yeah,
It's whatever we're doing isn't just for us. It's like
right,
we're a community and we have to serve, and so have a good time, build
yeah,
relationships, but also
yeah,
like serve our community too, and hopefully
right,
build relationships that last a lifetime. Like
right,
like this.
exactly. And to where you can reconnect with someone in the middle of in the middle of almost nowhere, and
Yeah,
you feel you're still able to be like, hey man, how's it going? And you know what, we're it's all good, or call up Falabi 10 years later, 11 years later plus, and it's still all good. We pick up almost like nothing ever happened from where we left off. um,
absolutely.
that was amazing. But you touched on something that I think is key and crucial. Is it helps you learn leadership, right?
Yeah,
You took on these roles early on. and it helped, you learn how to have a team, think about, your social responsibility, think about how to give back, think about how to inspire people and things like that, and just really be that example and the leader. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because you use that, I know, and I'm sure you ended up using that in some other ways, but can you at least talk about it from that perspective, how it helps you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did it. I got in because I loved ASA, and I'm someone who's also, you know, I also like happy to present myself to lead if the opportunity comes up. Why not? Um, but I got a lot out of it. I grew. It was probably one of the best things that at UT, and it opened many more doors than I could have never have imagined. Like I was
Right,
able. That became my platform through which I joined other organizations and met a lot of other really great people who have been really impactful for me. Um, but I think, learning, just stepping up and assuming leadership and taking a position, but you've seen it as service, and doing whatever is in your hand, do it well. I
right,
think it's just great practice. And I look back now, I'm thinking we were basically entrepreneurs because we had no money and we had to organize all these events and
right,
create this product, which is like the organization, the meetings, the events we put on, the parties, the programs. We were basically entrepreneurs. As I look back now, and then we think, me and Charles will be thinking, hey, how can we raise money? So we wrote letters to Oprah. She never answered us. But like, we would like apply, look for funding on campus. Then we started like asking people, selling things. Like it was actually, looking back now, was great training for small business entrepreneurship. And
right.
sorry to disappoint you, I don't have a thriving small business yet, but I've been able to, like, it really helped me when I was interviewing for jobs, particularly.
That's
Um,
awesome.
when you can say, hey, I and my team, we did this, we created this out of nothing. And
Right,
it shows
right.
that you have created, and you have, you're able to see things through, and as well, you're still doing well in school. So you can, what do you say, walk and chew gum at the same time.
At the same
And
time, right.
people, I think particularly for students, like it's great training. For me, I look back and I'm very grateful that I had those experiences. And yeah, I think it was one of the best things I did at UT. It really helped me grow, and it's given me confidence that um, I could do similar things again, or even on a bigger scale. So
Right. That's awesome. I'm very I'm I'm very excited to hear that, because even you reference, not having a thriving small business yet, but that entrepreneurial spirit, and even if you don't have that, I'm sure you can see how it's helped you even in your roles that you've taken on, down, later down the years. Um, and similarly, I can see how that that can definitely be that can be an asset when you try to when you're applying and you're able to talk about, hey, I was able to do this and this and this as a student,
yeah,
and so I think that's amazing. That's amazing. All right, sorry guys, we're back. I had to have some technical difficulties, but Falabi was just telling us about, his years leading ASA, this student organization at the University of Texas, and kind of the success that you had with that, and how you at that point were practicing leadership and entrepreneurship and really ownership, of something. And even if it was just that role where a lot of people may have seen it as just doing this, you actually took it and ran with it. And you know it was we it was amazing, as far as some of the things that we did. Fest Africa, for those that were not aware, was this event. It was one of the biggest events of the years. That, am I right?
absolutely. Biggest event of the year. We celebration of African culture. So we'd have cultural dances, we'll have some big play monologues, we'd have fashion show, African food, people selling everything concerning Africa. And
Right.
it's really a big celebration of African culture. And so it
Okay.
gives you a taste of the continent in one evening without you buying a plane ticket.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It kind of lets you experience it in a way um, that if you really don't know anything about the continent, you've never been to the continent. You may have seen some things on TV or have friends from there, but hey, here's a dance. Here's some food options. Here's X, Y, and Z. Here's some information. Here's a more accurate description of what it's like, or
Yeah,
what the culture represents, as opposed to what may be portrayed on TV. And so
yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Very important event.
Yes,
But it's
yes,
fun. It
yes.
was very fun.
Yeah, awesome. So you majored in chemical engineering. And you left a year before I did. Why don't we talk about what you where you went from there? I know you got into oil and gas. Is that it?
Yeah. So I guess, now I'm thinking back, like I chose chemical engineering in part because of some of the problems I saw growing up. So I was born in Port Harcourt. I lived in Warri, lived in Lagos a bit, and back in Warri and England as well. But when we lived in Nigeria, I have early memories of, waiting with my grandma for like 2, 3 hours to buy gas for the car.
Wow.
And when I lived in Warri, I remember like I used to drive past the refinery on my way to school every day. And my dad would explain to me, this refinery makes gas for the cars, or petrol, right? But yet we have all these long lines. I thought, okay, this is a problem. And, people would die, frankly. Like, you know, there was a story of someone who had an asthma attack and at home, and they're trying to take them to the hospital. But because of the fuel scarcity, the person was unable to get there on time and the person died. So
Wow.
lack of fuel is costing people lives. And so I chose to study chemical engineering because I wanted to go back and fix this problem in Nigeria. And so I was, very lucky as an international student. I was able to get a job before graduation. And my first job was working with a firm in Houston, basically designing refineries. So I
Nice.
helped to design units in refineries and petrochemical plants. And it was a great job. I started on August 4th, 2008. And then less than 6 weeks later, the stock market collapsed.
Wow.
And by February, so this is like 6 months after I started my first job, the company laid off 10% of the employees.
Wow.
And I'm shaking in my boots, well, figurative boots, because like I'm on a visa.
All
And
right.
so if you get caught, I'm on, back when they plane back to Lagos. And and I'm just like, yo, like I'm still learning, like what value can I add? Like these are highly experienced engineers. How they can be, so I was a bit concerned.
Right.
And then not only after that first cut, it now became every third Wednesday of the month. If your phone rings, bye bye.
You're up. Damn. Wow.
Your card's been pulled. And so for me, I had this whole dream about, oh yes, I'm gonna go do this, I'm gonna do that, have this great career. And then within 6 months, a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
slap on the face.
Right. Everyone's on the
Welcome
chopping block.
welcome to corporate America.
Yeah.
And thankfully for me, like I was able to, make it through all the layoffs, but it was just heart wrenching and
Right.
gut wrenching to watch that and be in that environment for a whole year, where every third Wednesday of the month you don't know if it's going to be you, and you're
Right.
seeing people, your coworkers, people who you respect, people you work with, given 10, 15 years of their careers to this company, getting cut.
Right.
So yeah, so that was I was like, okay, I need to get out of here. So I didn't know, like engineering was fun, but I started getting bored as well. because I realized a couple things. Like first thing is like, okay, once you've designed this thing, okay, I've done it. What next? The next one might be a bit different size, but I've done it before. So like, give me more. And then I started asking questions like, why are we building these refineries in China and India, in the Middle East? Why not Nigeria? Why? And so asking those questions got me on a path that led me to grad school. Um, and it's funny looking back now, like I found the program I wanted to go to years in advance, but I was scared to apply because it was the middle of the recession. I'm like, you
Right.
look, dude, you're on a visa. Now you have work visa, H-1B. People are crying and to God for this thing. You have this thing in your hand. Are you going to let go of this thing you have in your hand, go back to school in the middle of a recession? And I probably stayed longer than, sounds bad, but for me, I knew I wasn't going to do this long term. So why waste your time? I stayed there for 4 years. Then I
Wow.
went back to school, and I studied more chemical engineering, but this time with energy economics. I went to Cornell, and that's a great thing at Cornell is that it's anybody, any field of study, and so
Can you repeat that? You said you studied energy what?
I studied more chemical masters in chemical engineering, but I did a concentration in energy economics
Okay, gotcha.
because I wanted to understand like what's driving these decisions. Engineers were making the big decisions, right? It's the business people, the
Right.
lawyers who are financing things. I'm like, okay, I want to be with them.
Did you mention the school? Or I thought I heard
Yeah,
Brown.
Cornell,
Cornell. Wow,
yeah.
amazing school. So
Great
hold on.
school.
Let me interject there. All right, for everyone that's still questioning whether or not this guy's a genius, right? Like you're a chemical engineer. You're doing these projects. You said you were doing all these projects, but you're still getting bored. And you're still getting bored. And you're still getting bored because it's like, okay, I already did that. I already did that. I already did that. That's genius. Like a lot of times, like, like you see these kids in school early on that, they may be acting out in class, you know, um, but it's because they're bored. They've already done their homework. They can figure out the problem before you write it on the board. That type of
Yeah.
thing. And that's kind of, you're still kind of like, you know, showing some of those characteristics even now in the workplace in corporate America after you've gotten this first job, you know, hey, I was right. You are a child prodigy. You were a child prodigy at that point.
To be clear, like, I mean, yes, I was getting bored. Not to say it was completely easy. Like, I didn't know everything at all by any stretch of imagination. But I just felt like I wanted to be challenged in new ways. And
Right.
I felt that, and I also felt like, okay, hey, these guys aren't making the big decisions. No offense. But like,
Right.
you know, and I started looking at people who are running like oil companies years ago, but they aren't doing engineering today. And so I'm like, okay,
So sorry, repeat that because you froze a little bit. You said you were looking at people that are running
I
all.
was I was looking at people who are in the industry. So I looked at there was a couple of people I found online. I used to stalk them on LinkedIn. And I'd look at their resume and I'd be like, wait, this person is not an engineer. Like this person is like an MBA or they're a lawyer, or maybe they're a former consultant, a former banker. I'm like, and I thought, okay, like, and I realized in some ways, like the work I was doing was important, but I wasn't necessarily driving the big decisions.
Driving
Those
change.
were driving decisions. We were like fulfilling a service,
Right.
like an important service, and it's good to do, and no shame in that game
Let
at
me
all.
let me interject there a little bit because we see that similar thing in healthcare.
Hmm.
I'm a pharmacist. I work in
Yeah.
hospitals.
Yeah.
Even let's talk about just pharmacy. Let's talk pharmacy, and then we'll go into hospitals. The big corporations, it's these MBAs that are running them. Yeah, this person might have been a pharmacist at one point, maybe, but now this person went and maybe got an MBA, an MHA, whatever, and
Mhm.
now it's MBAs and business people that are telling, you know, pharmacists and doctors and nurses and, the actual leaders in these professions how to run the pharmacy, how to run the hospital. It's people
Yeah.
that have never treated a patient, in essence. And so we see that in healthcare, and the issue with it is they are not aware and they don't know how to treat it. They've never treated a patient, but you're now telling us how we should treat our patients and how to, or as a pharmacist, oh, you've never actually been in a pharmacy to in a position where you're having to, give you know, sell a prescription, talk to a
Yeah.
patient, deal with insurance, deal with get a phone call from a doctor that, hey, I need this, I need that. But the MBAs are then still telling you, okay, you need to do more and more of this without a break, without a this, without a that, without any help, and
Mm,
expecting you to not make any mistakes under
mm.
that type of, so we see that as well.
I mean, I have two reactions to that, right? So yeah, I agree with you that I think what you're alluding to is like there's an opportunity to develop more empathy, right? So maybe them spending time on the front lines can help them get greater appreciation for some of the recommendations that they're offering. But the second thing is like, because as my story goes, like I kind of became one of those people in a way, and I've come to realize like there are valuable insights and recommendations that people with that skill set can offer. And so, you know, I
The,
think
the
the
big,
ideal world.
I think
Go ahead.
the thing in healthcare is that you're dealing with people's lives, right? You're dealing with health, medications, you're dealing with sick patients, and it's like, you know, you're being put in your, it's not necessarily just empathy, but it's now the profession is in a very, it's almost dead, the retail aspect of it, because you've removed a very human element of what it was before, or the you'll hear pharmacists say they don't get to counsel their patients like they
Yeah.
used to enjoy, because you don't have time to do that,
Yeah.
because it's, you know there's 10 people waiting, it's boom 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 boom, more
Yep.
more 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 more, you know um
It's a
and,
growing trend in the world, honestly,
oh
across
yeah,
all industries,
but
and like yeah.
it's noticing, it's understanding that it is a business, right? First and foremost, it's a business. It's on the New York Stock Exchange, like floor. Their responsibility is to make money.
Absolutely.
And so they, without having a lot of actual people, you'll see MBAs, lawyers, that are sitting on pharmacy boards. Why are you sitting on a pharmacy board, but you're not even in the profession? You're a you're a
I mean,
lobbyist.
I think there, for me, I recognize that there are very important insights and recommendations that they can offer. I think particularly for boards, like you want a diverse board, variety of skill sets. If you have a board that's just pharmacists and so on, it's not going to be very effective. You need people who have a strategy mindset, people with strong marketing chops, right? It's a business, right? So, we need to have the legal background to protect us from, getting into major situations, right? So I think what's needed is like, in the ideal world,
And you have
you'd
that,
have
but
people,
these
yeah, it's
people
about,
these people are from these corporations, right? You have their representatives, their lawyers from these corporations, to where if you're trying to pass a ruling to say, well, you know what? No, we want pharmacists to be able to have a lunch break.
mm,
you know, we want pharmacists to, don't put a pharmacist in there without adequate help, a
yeah,
technician, and
yeah,
well, this lawyer is now like, well, no, technically based on, this legal code and blah, 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 you know, you don't need a whatever. And it's like, okay, no, it's not that you don't need this. It's, you have to understand the risk, because it's not, if there's an oil spill, whatever in the Gulf somewhere, okay, that's bad. And that
mhm,
has global, that has, uh uh,
Environmental implications,
yeah,
social implications. Yeah.
that has ramifications. But if you make a mistake and give the wrong pill to a patient,
That's yeah.
you could have
That's not true.
right.
I mean, I'm less familiar with the pharmacy space. I personally love, I take a lunch break. Even if it's 30 minutes, 15 minutes, I think it's healthy. So I recommend please go for lunch breaks. Um, I think for me, the thing that's happening is like the nature of work is changing so much.
Right.
You know, you're right. Like it's becoming more demanding and less personal. And for that reason and others, it's just important for people to actually have multiple streams of income
Right.
and earn, start positioning yourself for like to have options. Because when you have options, you can afford to like say, you know what, this situation is working for me, and I can, you know, go on elsewhere.
Gotcha. Yeah. I I did. I guess I was trying to like draw that comparison as to what you were seeing in the oil and gas field with
Yeah.
refineries and oil companies of,
Hmm.
you know what? And I guess maybe I you weren't necessarily saying it from a point of view of they're putting you they're and you're putting these, you know, work conditions, you know, that are not, you know, ideal or whatever, you know, that's what they're putting on you guys. So it was more like those are the decision makers. And if you want a refinery in Nigeria, if you want a refinery, you know, wherever, that's kind of where you at that level that you need to be, you know.
Basically is like that's where decisions are being made. What's their background, and if you want to read the room, that could give you a clue onto what your next steps could be. That
Right.
was how I'm thinking about it. Um, and
All right. We're back. Apologies. Some more technical difficulties. But no, so you went for your MBA in Cornell knowing that, sorry,
no
not MBA, master
MBA.
in
Yeah,
chemical engineering
master's in chemical engineering with a concentration in energy economics.
and
Um,
economics. Okay.
and the great thing with Cornell is that they have this part of the school is anybody, any field of study. And so for me, I really embraced that. And so
Anybody can do what?
anybody, any field of study.
What does that mean?
So to me, it meant that anyone, doesn't matter who you are, what race, gender, where you've come from, you can pursue any field of study, anything you
Okay.
want to study. And so for me, I took that to mean that I didn't need to be restricted to chemical engineering.
Oh,
I
nice.
could pursue, because I'm a very curious person. And so I'm like, look, I'm at this great school. Why not pursue my interests? So I took classes. I did a program in the business school. I took like 3 classes. I was in class with a bunch of MBA students. Um, I did things outside of just engineering, and that made me happy. Like I loved, you know, jumping from the lab. Then I'm going to discuss something completely different. You know, my next, you know, it brought my brain. My brain felt very
Right.
tickled, if you
Right.
will. So I loved that. And then after, I had a great time on campus. Made lots of great friends. You know, we still have reunions. Um, and then I moved back to Texas, right? Because shoveling, those Ithaca winters are cold. Ithaca, Cornell is like on the way to Canada. Like it's
Where
5 hours.
exactly is Cornell?
It's upstate New York, so it's like
Oh,
four
wow.
or 5 hours north of New York City, and it's
So I know
cold.
Buffalo, New York. I have a friend there in
Yeah,
Buffalo. Is it
it's like an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours from Buffalo. It's not. It's
nice?
kind of that. Yeah,
Nice,
yeah.
nice,
Like
nice. I mean, everyone always knows the name Cornell is obviously very, very, very well known and popular. But for some reason,
where
I
is
was
it?
right,
it's
right, right,
it's
right,
almost like centrally isolated, right? It's kind
gotcha.
of yeah, it's all good. I love the school though. It's very different from UT because UT is like massive public school in Austin, and then Cornell is
Liberal.
like smaller private school in the middle of nowhere, right? Ithaca is basically, you know, it's not like
I
a
was in
thriving.
Ithaca. I've heard
Ithaca.
Ithaca.
It's a
Nice.
beautiful area, like,
Is St. John's there? The university?
no, there's two schools. There's Cornell and there's Ithaca College. But
Okay.
there are a bunch of schools nearby,
All right.
like 30 to 60 minutes away.
Okay.
But it's
Nice.
gorgeous in the summer.
Nice.
Um,
Nice. Nice.
and then it's pretty in the fall, then it gets cold.
So what
So
did
after
you
shoveling snow, I was like, yo, Texas is good.
I gotta get back to Texas. Yeah, no, I don't blame you. Uh what did you learn as far as obviously you got this degree now, and I think it was really interesting and very good what you had mentioned about this culture of anything, anyone, anything, anywhere, that type of stuff, and this diversity of thought that you were able to not just thought but information and studies that you were able to pursue in that and put yourself in, remove yourself, not just isolated with the chemical engineers and those people, but also go and do, a class with the MBAs and the business folks, and then go do something somewhere else with, a totally different field of study. What did that teach you as far as, learning, or not just learning, but as far as you just being able to see things from different points of views, I guess.
Yeah, it was, it made me, I think, so many things to say at once. Okay, first of all, it made me realize another reminder that I don't have to hold on to labels people put on me. Because
Nice.
people look at me and say, you have a degree in engineering, you had 4 years experience as an engineer, you're studying engineering. Why are you in the business school again? But at that, if I had gone to a different school, they would have looked at me sideways like, why are you here? And and so I've learned that for me, I'm like, I don't try and define myself. I don't limit myself. You
Nice.
know, I can learn anything I need to learn. I
Nice.
love learning anything I need to learn. That's
Right.
one thing I took with me. The other thing I took with me was the importance of diversity of thoughts. And I did a program focused on sustainability. And, there were a lot of fellow students who were very passionate about environmental sustainability, societal, like various elements of sustainability. And some of them, I just felt like it was important for me as someone who at that point in time was in oil and gas. Here I am saying, hey, I want to learn about sustainability. And some people were confused why I was there. And so I felt like it was really important for me to be in those rooms so I could actually provide a different perspective. Because other than if I hadn't been in those rooms, they were having conversations about like how oil companies are evil, they're bad, they're destroying the environment, they don't care. I'm like, yo, a lot of the things they're consuming came from oil and gas.
Right.
If you stop consuming some of these products, if you stop flying airplanes, if you stopped buying produce that doesn't grow local, it's not grown locally, don't use any inorganic fertilizer, for example, or don't wear makeup, or even like my glasses, right? Like, you know, so I feel like it was important for me to be in some of those rooms to provide a different view. And it wasn't always appreciated, if I'm being honest,
No.
but I could voice the view
Right.
and take it or leave it. And if
Right.
I hadn't been in those rooms, it would have gone unchallenged.
Right.
So the other thing I learned was like, okay, if you happen to be in a room, use your voice, because perhaps you're in a room for such a time as this, like Esther's story, right? Perhaps that's the reason you're there, is to
Right.
provide a different perspective.
Right. And that's
So
awesome because, you're talking about the power of, just bringing a different perspective. And even, like earlier, how, we talked about, the importance of, having this kind of business, not just mindset, but also having an MBA, in the room, in this profession, to help, or legal to help, kind of, um, to help foster what, the different parts of how the profession needs to operate and run and move. that's awesome. But I think what's amazing, about that, I found that at UT, and I kind of feel like I got that so much at UT as well. The
Mhm.
diversity.
Yeah.
I was, obviously, in natural sciences. I was a bio major pre-farm, and so I had those those nerds that I was hanging with, you know. But but I loved studying in the business school because the McCombs Business School was right there, and
Yeah.
I found a place in there where it was open 24 hours, and you could go and study kind of pretty much whenever, the atrium in there. But I know
Mm.
they used to have this thing where they would bring Fortune 500
Yeah.
CEOs to come speak, and anyone could go. I think it was open to pretty much everybody. You didn't have to be in the business school, and so I would go to these, kind of seminars, events, and just hear them, just hear these, you know, people in the business world. I saw Michael Dell there. He
Nice.
gave a speech. I think the CEO of I don't know if I saw him, but the CEO of maybe was it Southwest Airlines or something, you know, things like that.
Great breakfast. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously having friends that like yourself that were in chemical engineering, even though I didn't really know too much about it, I had friends that were, you know, psychology majors, that were this majors, that majors, and just being able to kind of be with people that weren't just the people that you were in class
Yeah.
with, or the people
It's
that.
very important, especially now. I feel like as a society, after leaving college, I'm finding I have to be very intentional about meeting new people who are different from me, right? Because like
Right.
you go to work, many of you guys are, many people, your coworkers are, you guys have a lot of things in common. Maybe you went to similar schools or similar majors. It's just, you know, and then your close friends, they're probably your close friends because they have a lot of things in common already. And
Right.
so that's something I missed about college and grad school, was just like having those random conversations
Right
with
there.
a major or like somebody who's like studying philosophy or like anthropology. Like,
Yeah.
I do this thing now called Lunch Club, where I get paired once a week for like a 45-minute conversation with sometimes it's completely random, sometimes it's related to like something I'm interested in.
Oh, nice.
But it's been great for just meeting people. Like I've had some interesting conversations with people like in Austin, in England, in California.
Wow.
But one has to be intentional.
You have
I
to.
just started
Yeah.
this like 4 weeks ago, but
Nice.
one has to be intentional about like
Doing that.
open up your mind, and otherwise it becomes like an echo chamber. Like everyone's Facebook is like,
The same thing. Yeah.
it's not ideal.
So how did you that kind of, how did you go from where did you go from there after you got your master's in chemical
Cheers.
engineering? I keep wanting to say MBA.
Yeah.
And then you
No,
came back to Texas.
I came back to Texas. I joined a firm. I did energy research. I loved it, and for me, I enjoyed it because I got to answer some of the questions I had when I worked as an engineer, right? So I wanted to understand, like, why are we building a lot of new refineries in China and India at that time? And as an energy analyst, I was developing supply demand forecast that could help me understand those questions. And so that was great. Then I had great bosses who gave me, who gave me runway and encouragement to just like pursue my interest. And so I would just write these, research papers. I conduct my own like market research, and it was just great.
Right.
I looking back now, I really valued the autonomy that
Right.
I was able to have, and
Right.
I eventually was able to launch a product. So that was probably the most exciting thing I did there. Was at that time it was around 2014, so North American shale was taking off, and like so South Texas, all the oil fields in South Texas, Eagle Ford, and North Dakota, back and other places were just like beginning to boom. And the oil prices in those regions were different from the oil price in Houston. And so companies were asking, hey, we need to understand the prices so we can finance things, so we can plan, that sort of thing. And I helped develop the product that basically helped answer these questions. And
Wow.
it didn't start off like that. It started off because someone left the team and people were asking the question. I was like, okay, hey, I inherited this model, very complex and not easy to follow, but I
Right.
spent many late nights and some weekends just combing through it.
Right.
And then I developed the model, and I started asking, and I realized that our clients kept asking the same questions. And
Right.
so I was like, yo, boss, like, I think we have an opportunity here. And we basically developed a product. It was a market research product where we would forecast oil prices in the short term and long term. And we also provided the logic. So provided our forecast for supply, demand, we provided market commentary, and it was great. I loved wearing multiple hats. So I was like crunching the numbers in Excel, then I'd flip my switch, and then I was now joining the sales team to go out and meet investment banks or oil companies or government agencies. Then I now flip the switch again, and then I'm like developing like marketing materials. Flip the switch
Wow.
again, and I'm back to like, okay, if you need to write this report. So for me, I
Wow.
felt really alive,
Wow.
and also like again gave me that confidence that I can actually help package this thing, and people are paying, like major companies and major investment banks and major governments are paying good money to buy this product of our brain.
Wow.
And you know, I think it wasn't easy because
Wow.
in that 2014-15, people had tighter budgets with the oil price crash. But it was an important thing, and so we were able to sell into like some major, like some of the biggest, like literally the top three biggest oil and gas companies. So that was really empowering for me. And it's probably one of the more formative experiences, kind of like the UT leadership thing. This was also a formative experience for me as well. Yeah,
Right.
that
And
was
and
great. Go ahead.
and again, that goes into like you are someone who you're very inquisitive. You're
Yeah,
very, you ask questions, you like learning, you like that diversity of, kind of thought, that diversity of, okay, I know how to do this. Now let me not just keep doing that. Let me learn about other things, or allow me to do other things. And you were able to take that, and thankfully for these great bosses who gave you the leeway, to
yeah,
allow you to do that, and the opportunity where someone, okay, left the team, and now there's a problem of, okay, these oil prices, whatever the problem is, and you were able to, okay, kind of sit down and you know figure it out, come up with something that worked, and obviously worked well enough to where it solved a problem that people needed, despite whatever their financial situations were, or
yeah.
restrictions were, or budgetings were.
Mhm.
And that's amazing. Wow.
It's still in production. They have like 2, 3 analysts who are still supporting the product till today. So that's great. I think for me, I had like a couple takeaways. One of them was there's always opportunity. So we launched this in the middle of the crisis, oil price crisis right then. And,
Right.
we still found opportunity in the midst of that crisis. The second takeaway was, you know, just start. Like,
Right.
I did. Man, that model was like initially it took an hour to run all the macros. So
Okay.
I'll make the change and I'll press play and it will run for an hour, and then the results now come out looking crazy. I'm like, okay, I need to figure this out. So like you can imagine how much time one spends. Like when I say nights and weekends, I mean nights and weekends. But I learned a lot in that process. And if I had been too intimidated to start, I wouldn't have gotten through to like all the fun stuff.
Right. Right.
And then go ahead.
No, no, no. Keep going.
Then I think for me, the third takeaway was upon reflection, don't take great bosses for granted.
Hmm.
I had some great bosses there in that job. And I think for me, like it made sense for me to leave that job for reasons which we'll soon get to, I'm sure. But I don't think I appreciated those bosses even more now than when I was there.
Gotcha.
And so, sometimes I talk to people about career stuff, and I'm all for, being all you want to be and, going out and getting yours, all that stuff. But um, appreciate when you have a good situation. Don't take it for granted.
Right. It
Yeah.
sometimes, like it says, it takes you not having that or being in a bad situation for you to appreciate the good situation that you were
Yeah.
in at some point.
Mhm.
But I definitely understand that. Uh, but wow, that is kudos to you on that. And I will ask this after off the record. If well, no, look, is you said it's still in production and it's still, you still have analysts that support the product. So it's still, I mean, it's still out there and it's still work.
Yeah. I
Is it
mean,
a software?
no, well, when I left, we were transitioning off. The goal was transitioning off from Excel, this gnarly model, into Python. And so we had multiple like modernization paths. We actually one idea we had was we're going to actually license it out to our customers, and so they could like run their scenarios and all sorts of things. Um, Not all of those things have happened, but the product is still in production,
Nice,
and people are still buying it. It's grown, you know
nice.
there and I think I think it's kind of like founding companies. Like one person can start it, and then somebody else can come on and take it and help scale it even more and bring in new insights and
Right,
bring new ideas,
right.
refine it some. So I think, yeah,
That,
I'm very grateful I had that experience. It's
that's
that was it's very unusual to have that amount of responsibility as early as I did.
that's
And I'm
awesome.
really, really grateful to my bosses then, Bojo and Sam, for letting me have it.
That's awesome. Um, and so why did you leave that place, or where did you go from
Yeah,
there? That was
you
the next
know,
question.
I had a great situation there, and I could have stayed. And I really wrestled with the decision: should I leave or not? I think for me, I started getting bored again. Like I'd gone through this really exciting ramp up of, okay, building this product. And then you're now selling, you're trying to get proof of concept. You've signed up a few big accounts, like some big investment banks, some big government agencies, some big energy companies. And then now you're just in this maintenance phase. And I wasn't being as challenged as I wanted to be. Um, I also was watching what's happening in the market. I was like, look, this oil and gas, my first job experience was like cuts, cuts, cuts. I'm like, I'm the one forecasting the oil price, and I'm seeing what I know what I'm seeing,
Right.
and I know how scenarios could be. And like, so I started developing some misgivings about, just some concerns about the volatility. I I didn't love the idea of these boom busts, like particularly on a visa, because if you lose your job, you're on a plane in 3 weeks. I was like, look, I want to be in control of my life, my
Right.
narrative, not so much be at the mercy of the whims of the oil market.
Gotcha.
And for me, I eventually, I had been going through this, then a recruiter hit me up and said, hey, Afo, we have an opportunity at this company. Are you interested? And looking back on college, this was one of the dream companies. Like, I didn't know about consulting before. One of my friends, Shane, was like, I saw him carrying all these big books, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you carrying these books? You have homework. And he was prepping for consulting interviews. And he eventually went to Bay and never worked as a chemical engineer. I was like, oh, and his work, the kind of stuff he was doing was pretty interesting. So I also applied to consulting companies at UT. Didn't get a single interview, nothing, no love from me. And
Wow.
then I applied when I was at Cornell. Didn't get an interview, no love. Forward, a recruiter from one of these top consulting firms reached out to me. I'm like, okay, this is good. Turn of events. Um, but I had to wrestle with it because they wanted someone to work in the energy group. So I thought this is a good segue for me. I can do more energy stuff, which is my background, develop some consulting toolkit. But I really wrestled with whether or not I was going to actually apply.
Wow.
Because for me, knowing, I asked a few questions from friends who were in consulting, and they're like, look, the interviews are not like normal interviews. You need to prep. You need to, like, it's case interviews. And I felt like if I was going to go for this thing, like, it's going to require me to invest my time and to really to do this thing well. I don't like half measures. Like, if you're going to apply, you're going to apply and give it your best shot.
Right.
And so I was really wrestling, like, should I or should I not? And then I told him, let me think about this. They came back and I'm like, let me think. I'm still thinking. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. And I wrote down the reasons why I wanted to leave where I was, a great situation, and what I hoped to get from this new situation. And that became my motivation. And so I would like, I'm a generally laid back person, but when I want things, I go after them. Let it be said, you did everything within your own power to get what you want to get. And so for me, that meant, waking up in the morning, sometimes 4 a.m., 5 a.m. before work and working out to like prep. It meant for me, like, finding people to practice with. Like, I joined all sorts of message boards to find people who are also going through the same thing to chat. Like, back to people like in Nigeria and India. Yeah, I didn't really care where you were. I needed to practice. At the point, I even hired a coach too to like help me, because I realized I'm competing for a job with people who are literally in a Harvard Business School. They have all these resources. Here I am in my Houston apartment trying to like get the same job as these people who have learned business at the world's finest institution for the last 2 years. They have access to ridiculous career services. They have their peers who came from these firms to practice with already. And it's just like a one-man show over here. So I said, okay,
Right.
I gotta like do what I need to do to compete too. And so, I also like was traveling for work at that time, and I had to push back the interviews, but it actually bought me more practice time, so it was all good. I was able to make it through, thankfully, and then I made the painful decision to leave my great job to enter this new uncertain territory.
Wow. Wow. What an amazing story thus far. And that's just the beginning. There's still so much more in this interview, but due to time constraints, I'll release this in 3 parts, either keeping the same schedule or even sooner. In the next part, we talk about the exciting courses career has taken from consultant to where he is now. And we even talk about finance, personal finance, money. But let me not give away too much. Make sure you're subscribed, following the podcast, the page, the channel, and you'll be the first to know when this next episode drops. Thanks for watching. See you next time.